another edition of the Stardom Road podcast here on the Countout Podcast Network. I am your host, as always, Scott Edwards, and with me, as always, is my co-host, my friend, Trent Breward. Trent, how are you?
Don't sound so disappointed when you pause and say, as always. It's like, oh man, I've got another podcast recording with him. Every fortnight, without fail, he decides to show up and join me.
To be fair, this might be the longest we've went without recording in a long while.
That is actually a fair point, yeah. Because it'd either be when you went or when I've been away. It'd be one of the two.
Yep. It's probably the same amount of timing because I think when you went away, we recorded like the day before. And when I went away, we recorded a couple days. So,
yes. But you're back. I'm back. We can get back to our normally scheduled podcasting.
And everyone listening has no idea that I was really that gone because the episode came out on time. But thank you, everyone who listened to the Mayu Iwatani Double Champion podcast. Trying to promote that, everyone, was impossible because I could not remember what we talked about outside of the fact that Mayu Iwatani was double champion. But today, we're talking 5-star Grand Prix. Today and next episode, the focus of our show is the GP. Very important, very special. It has become, to me, the top tournament in professional wrestling. Move over G1 and your 32 competitors. I don't think the M1 victory was ever in the conversation. No, it looks pretty decent. But
we got an Aussie in there. It automatically gives it bonus points.
That's true. They have an Aussie. They only have one.
Just the one Aussie, but it's a good Aussie.
Yeah, it's a good Aussie. So we'll take that. But this is
where's the Aussie in the 2023 5-star Grand Prix?
I believe she's going back to Australia, actually. But I'm very excited. The 5-star Grand Prix is my favorite time of the year as a wrestling fan. I know a lot of people love the G1. They love, Forbidden Door time. I sometimes can't stand Forbidden Door time. They love Wrestle Kingdom time, year end in Japan. There's a lot of times to love, but there's nothing better than the 5-star Grand Prix. The past 3 years, including this one, the excitement for the tournament has been at an all-time high. And we haven't seen the 2023 tournament, but based on the lineup, I'm feeling pretty good. It has the makings to be another special tournament. I'm not gonna go too far and say an all-timer tournament because I don't want people to come back to this and be like, what an idiot. But I do think
it gets them to double listen, so maybe you should make that bold claim.
Oh, no, that's right. It's going to be an all-timer tournament. It's going to be phenomenal. You're going to have 4+ star matches every show. See, that's probably not that dumb. That's probably very close to true. That being said, what we are doing today is going through the history of the 5-star Grand Prix. What we are doing next week is going through special run. Did I say next week?
You did. You just that eager.
We're not going to be on next week. I'm used to doing weekly podcasts. What we're going to do next episode is our second part of the 5-star Grand Prix history, and that's looking at the incredible all-timer run of Shuri in the 2021 GP. So, Trent, before we get going and into the conversation, what are your feelings about the 5-star Grand Prix as a whole? How have you enjoyed seeing it become what it has become? And, whatever else you may be feeling.
Yeah, look, I'm very much in the same boat as you. It's like, this is the time I'm always most excited for because you get the best of the best in Stardom being put in a situation where they know no matter, they might not be wrestling at the big venues all the time, but they know this is when everyone's kind of paying attention to them. And if you're going to really set yourself out, this is the time to do it. Because consistently we see over the years that someone steps up in any given 5-star Grand Prix and says, this is the year that I'm asserting myself as someone you need to pay attention to. And it's always exciting to kind of see who that might be. This is a great opportunity for wrestlers, both at the sort of looking to prove themselves and the veterans kind of establishing positions, developing stories for the second half of the year. When I started following Stardom, it very much felt like the little sister to the G1 tournament. But over the years, it's kind of grown up and developed into very much what I agree is the premier tournament. I think it's more exciting and more interesting than G1. Admittedly, I'm not doing a New Japan Road podcast. I'm doing a Stardom Road podcast, so that might be part of it. But I do feel like
actually a show that they do.
It is, and it's not one worthy of a podcast. Funnily enough,
no.
But yeah, look, Stardom has sort of developed this tournament into something that not only makes the summer super exciting, but the second half of the year, because so much flows on from this. And obviously 2023, very exciting with possibilities of what could be coming. Even just from what we know at this point in time, will only get more exciting as we get closer to. But there's a reason why we want to do this history of 5-star Grand Prix, and that's to set the scene for new fans who maybe are coming into their first 5-star Grand Prix or only their second one. This hopefully will give you an idea of why it's such an exciting time and how it's grown, because it hasn't always been quite like this.
Was 2021 the year that it 100% took over the Cinderella as the tournament of Stardom?
Yes. Look, 2019, I think you saw a lot of buzz and excitement surrounding it, and that's also with the quality definitely started to pick up. I feel like the 5-star has often carried a slightly more prestige than the Cinderella tournament, but doesn't necessarily carry the same excitement differential that we see now.
Yeah.
Because the Cinderella is quite a value, especially while it was still a one-night tournament. There is certain prestige in being able to last an entire night with 3 or 4 matches, even if they are only going for 3 minutes. Now that it's been split out, like you're wrestling longer matches, but it doesn't carry quite the same level because you're getting weeks break at times.
Yeah, because I remember in 2020 there was still a lot more excitement for the Cinderella than I think there was that 5-star. And maybe it's because of the roster at the time and all that had happened before the 5-star. But once 2021 came around and once that tournament was over, it's like, okay, this isn't even a question anymore. But
2020 was definitely hampered by the timing of it all. Like even the Cinderella tournament, which was affected, that had the excitement of, we're getting wrestling again, because of the time, that got blocked by the COVID situation. Whereas we'd come back, we'd had a month or two, and now we were getting the Cinderella tournament. We were still recovering from losing a couple of key players prior to that. So it was carrying certain baggage. And I think that tournament did a lot to help establish what next year would become. But it was definitely still a prototype for what the current 5-star would look like.
Now, this tournament started back in 2012, so it's been going. It's been going. It hasn't. It's been around for a long time. There's a lot of interesting finalists. It's a tournament that I think a lot of Stardom fans go into now, especially, and they can look back at the past to kind of try and predict the finals in a unique way. It's a unique fashion, because I think with the tournament, you could sometimes expect one person who's like, okay, that's your winner, and then someone that benefits from the spot but isn't necessarily winning. I also think that heading into the 2023 tournament, it's the most unpredictable the tournament's been. Obviously we'll have our own thoughts, and we're not going to really talk about them too much on this show. You can check out the 5-star Grand Prix preview on the Ocean Cyclone show to hear me and Trent's thoughts in the coming weeks. If you want to hear us talk about it together, because we'll talk about the 5-star Grand Prix together a lot on different shows, but that's the only place we're going to be previewing it together. So definitely make sure to check that out. Ryan will likely be joining us as well, so that'll be a lot of fun. But this tournament does give an idea of who's going to be there, who's not going to be there. Heading into the 2023 tournament, I do think that's getting shuffled up a bit, but there are still those options to be, okay, that's your winner and that's your finalist. And I think that's why I like this tournament so much, is that it gives you an opportunity to predict without being purely predictable at the same time. Now, don't get me wrong, the last 3 winners have in many ways been predictable, but at the same time, they were the right choices, especially the last 2. I think no one will disagree that they were the wrong choices. Now, do we want to turn back the clock to 2012?
I think that's only fitting.
So,
what was happening in 2012? Wow, that's a long time ago.
Yeah, you're not kidding. Fun fact. So I've been watching. While doing things lately, I've been watching the MCU in order for the first time ever.
You have time to do anything else?
Well, I'm doing it like while doing other things. So I'm not like laser focused because I could never do that again. But I was going through phase 1 or whatever. I'm like, this movie's that old. I'm like, oh my god. So that's just a funny thing that we're talking about 2012, and this is where it really started. Okay, what's it going to mean? And my favorite part of this tournament is that while many of us know it to be the tournament to get a World of Stardom Championship challenge, they have changed it up through the years. There have been a few non-challengers. Now I think we're pretty set. It's going to be the world title every time, just like the Cinderella is probably going to be the Wonder every time. They'll throw a change up in there every now and then because they've never made that one official, but the GP really does feel like that.
It's just very convenient that those two titles kind of fit each tournament as well. Like the red belt is like to survive the 5-star Grand Prix, you have to be the best wrestler in the company. Whereas the Cinderella tournament, like even the name invokes a bit more of an emotion, a bit more of a passion side of things, which aligns up with the white belt.
One of my favorite parts also of the 5-star Grand Prix, and I can't stress this enough, is that it's always been the 2-block system. That is how all Grand Prix tournaments should be. Anything else is incorrect. New Japan.
Well, even Noah now are back to the 2-blockers.
I know. Everyone's gone back to the 2 blocks except for New Japan, who continues to add more people with half of the field not being needed. But that's a conversation for a different show. 5-star Grand Prix 2012, ranging from August 19th to September 30th. That's going to be a key part of our conversation here today as well. You guys are going to hear this tournament grow in time. But let's kick off. The 2 blocks were as followed. You had Aki Yasukawa, Io Shirai, Yuhi, Yoshiko, Nai Takahashi, and Yuzuki Aikawa on one side. That's pretty hard hitting, I'd say. That was, and another part of the thing I love about the 5-star Grand Prix. There's always that's the block, and this one's fine. This tournament may have had the most one-sided blocks I've ever seen. On the other side, we have rookie Kairi Hojo, Saki Kashima, Miho Wakazawa, Dark Angel, Natsuki Tayo, and Kyoko Kimura.
A little bit top heavy, that one.
And it reflects in the scores on that one. It was A block heavy. In the end, your points finalists, it was Yuzuki Aikawa winning the A block with 7 points, and Nai Takahashi also having 7. Big shock. I know Nai didn't technically lose. Yoshiko at 6, Io Shirai at 5, Yuhi at 3, and Aki Yasukawa at 2. On the B block, it was Kyoko Kimura winning the block with 7 points. Natsuki Tayo was 7. Dark Angel was 6. Miho Wakazawa was 6. Saki Kashima with 3. And Kairi Hojo with 1.
That bottom feeder, she could never amount to anything, could she?
I know. She was desperate. And it would all turn out for Yuzuki Aikawa to go on to win the tournament, the first ever 5-star Grand Prix winner, defeating Kyoko Kimura in 16 minutes and 34 seconds. We have episodes, if you're listening to this for the very first time, you go back talking about Yuzuki Aikawa and her importance to this promotion in their early days. She was the first 5-star Grand Prix winner. Doesn't get much more important than that other than being the first Wonder of Stardom champion.
Yeah, there's a couple of firsts that you can claim. That's one of them. And obviously the one that she didn't really get to do was the World of Stardom Championship because, Nanae had to claim something there, didn't she?
This is a title.
Exactly. This is another case where it's apparent that you're sort of pushing someone in the 5-star Grand Prix, as it gets used quite a bit, is a perfect sort of jumping off platform. Whether they win the tournament or make the finals, that kind of honor is something that really can set you up. In this case, Yuzuki Aikawa won, which I think makes sense. It's the right call, even though she wasn't that much longer in the company. It kind of makes sense to back her in that situation. And Kyoko Kimura is like the perfect kind of veteran to throw in there as the challenging point, as the obstacle to overcome.
Yeah, I mean, thinking back, like, and I think this will be an interesting conversation as we go on. Like, was it the right choice? I think that'll be a fun thing for us to kind of change this up a little bit. Was Yuzuki Aikawa the right choice? The answer is yes. She was the right choice. She'd go on to then challenge Nanae Takahashi for the World of Stardom Championship at the year-end Climax 2012. So, major match there. You have champion versus champion, not both titles on the line. If you want to hear about that, go back to the last episode of when those matches happened.
Everything's cyclical.
Hey, we're on point today. It'll never happen
like poetry.
again.
It rhymes.
Yeah, we're usually like I don't know, like never mind.
We're not on point anymore. We were on point, and then you left the point.
Yeah, and then I had to mess it up on purpose. That being said, she would go on to lose to Nanae Takahashi. Of course, she'd go on to hold the Wonder Stardom Championship until her retirement. But still a very important part to get this tournament off the ground. And again, like I said, having someone like Aikawa be that first winner is very important to make the 5-star Grand Prix mean something. Having one of your top champions win that right off the bat is the right move, in my opinion, especially back then.
One of the most important things you can do when starting out a tournament is establishing it with winners that matter. And, we look back at this tournament over a decade later, and not just this particular year, most of the years moving forward, they're all won by someone that matters, whether it's someone who is previously established, about to be a next big thing kind of thing. They're all about like, okay, I can see why this person wins and why you would be coming into 2023 or future years going, I want to have my name listed alongside those people. And that's something that both the Cinderella tournament and the 5-star Grand Prix has done a pretty good job of, I would say.
I would definitely agree. They have meaningful winners every year. With the 5-star, I feel like I don't know if I will say they've always gotten the exact person right at the time in terms of popularity and everything, but they don't have any winners that you walk away from looking at a tournament saying, "Oh, that was a bad choice." All of them make sense. Even maybe you'll disagree with me as we go on, but I think all of them make sense one way or the other.
There's no obvious black mark on this tournament in terms of like, oh, that person won. That must have been a bad year.
Right. 5-star Grand Prix 2013, ranging from August 25th to September 23rd, 2013. So shorter than a month. That's different from the previous one. Shorter than a month. That won't last. On the A block side, you have Takumi Iroha, Kiori Oniyama, Kairi Hojo, Dark Angel, Io Shirai, and Alpha Female. On the B block side, I think this, by the way, this tournament is a lot more evenly split. You have Yuhi, Yoshiko, Natsuki Tayo, Aki Yasukawa, Kyoko Kimura, and Nanae Takahashi.
Yeah, this is this tournament, like obviously there can be some preferences in blocks, and I think it's easy looking back in 2023 at the A block and seeing Takumi, Kairi, Io all in the same block, and Kairi Oniyama, and thinking, oh, that's the block I'd really want to see. But we do have to keep in mind that the year that this tournament was in, and as a result, I do think this is a pretty clean tournament across the board, and not too surprising that Nanae Takahashi would go on to win. Obviously, they sort of lost their other key person, Yuzuki Aikawa, at this point, and there wasn't really anyone else really at the level where it's like, we're ready to fully strap the rocket on you. So I think Nanae Takahashi winning here makes a lot of sense as well.
Yeah, I think the only conversation at that time would have been Io Shirai, which they would go on to do the year after. So, spoiler alert. But I do think that would be the only other person I would have considered in this spot at this time frame. But going with Nanae at that time, it's a safe bet. It's a correct bet. Io Shirai was the world champion at that time. Yes.
Oh, that's the question, is it? I can do the research.
I believe
for
she
it.
was. I believe she was because Nanai would go on to challenge her. So yeah.
Of course, yeah. That's the
So,
easy way to work that out, isn't it?
yeah. So that's why she didn't win.
Mm.
But then stop him next year. But that would be the only person I would have considered at that time. But Nanai going back after having lost the World of Stardom Championship, getting back on the track with the 5-star Grand Prix, definitely the right choice. She beat Alpha Female in the finale. Yes, so that Alpha Female, of course, the big 2022 return of Alpha Female. She not only was a World of Star champion, she's a former 5-star Grand Prix finalist, folks. But yes, Takahashi beat her in 13 minutes and 8 seconds. I don't have much to say about the 2013 tournament.
Look, we have to acknowledge it is difficult to give super in-depth commentary on a lot of these early ones for the sheer fact that they aren't on Stardom World. It's not until 2017 that you can watch these tournaments from start to finish on the Stardom World streaming service. You have to find the DVDs, which can be found on secondhand services and like shops like Dodokan and stuff, but it is difficult to come across, especially because you can't just find one show online on like a Billy or something and just be satisfied because it's a month-long tournament. It's not that simple. But we will do our best to give you the coverage and the sort of the context of each year and why decisions were made.
Yeah, I'm not rich, so I can't buy all these things and go find them. Let's kick it over to the 20.
Is that a build-up link to your Patreon account there, Scott?
No, actually.
I'm not rich, but I can be thanks to you, the viewers.
That would have been good, but no, it's not. The 5-star Grand Prix 2014, August 24th to August 23rd. The tournament as follows. This features the first 5-star Grand Prix for one Mayu Iwatani. So that's important. It also features some interesting names that I think maybe one interesting name that jumps off the board. Otherwise, like whatever.
One and a half.
So on the A block, you have Kogama, Takumi Aroha, Dash Chisako, Mayu Iwatani, Kyoko Kimura, and Yoshiko. On the B block side, it is Starfire, Kaori Oniyama, Kairi Hojo, Melissa, Nanai Takahashi, and Io Shirai, who would go on to win the tournament by defeating Yoshiko in the finals as the reigning World of Stardom champion. And that's where we would have a change up in challenging, as Io Shirai would challenge for the Goddess of Stardom championship, teaming with Mayu Iwatani of Thunder Rock to face Kairi Hojo and Nanai Takahashi for the tag team gold.
Yep. And a trend is continuing here for the first few winners. None of them can convert their tournament victories into championship victories when they basically cash in their rightful challenge, which is, I think, another interesting decision that they did make. When you're establishing a tournament, especially with stakes like picking a championship match, it is interesting that it takes so long for someone to actually win in that situation.
It is, and I think it does kind of follow the same format that the G1. We've seen that with the G1. We did for a long time, I should say. That's changed a lot recently, but that can be said about Stardom's 5-star Grand Prix as well. But we move forward here. I do have some questions, by the way, that Trent doesn't know about at the end of the show. That'll be a lot of fun conversation-wise to talk about the history of the 5-star Grand Prix. But we'll have to wait and see there. 2015, August 23rd to September 23rd. We've reached one whole month. We're growing. It's growing. We had on one side Haruka Kato. I almost said Neko. That would have been terrible. Starfire, Kaoru, Queen Maya, Chelsea, and Kairi Hojo. Woof. Against the B block side, Chris Wolf, La Rosa Negra, Kaori Oniyama, Io Shirai, Mayu Iwatani, and block winner Hudson Envy. But full disclosure, folks, before this show, I said I have no clue who that is. And Trent said confidently, I think that I'm going to know who this is. Looked up a picture, didn't have a clue.
Yeah, I think it was one of those cases because this is right before I was a regular watcher, about a year and a half off. And so, like, I'd heard the name Hudson Envy quite a bit, especially when I was looking up Stardom and sort of what I'd missed out on. And I think I'd just seen the name so often. Not that like she's a regular recurring role in the top of Stardom, but I'd seen that name enough. Where I'm like, oh yeah, I recognize it. And I must have just painted a picture in my head of what Hudson Envy the wrestler looked like. And it turned out that my picture was incorrect because when I Googled her name, I'm like, oh, that's not who I had in my head. So there we go. That kind of gives you an idea of how much commentary we can provide on this year in particular. But I do think it's sort of it gives you an example of where Stardom was at in 2015. Because if you know Stardom's history, 2015, especially early on, was a rough period for them. They lost a couple of key members for one reason or another, and this is very much a rebuilding year. And you can kind of see that in who's in the tournament. A lot of okay names, sort of names that would come and go, heavy reliance on foreigners, that's fine, but I feel like when you've got a strong internal division, you have a couple of foreigners here and there. But when you're relying on them and having them take several key spots in the tournament, including a final, it does kind of speak to, we're still, building ourselves back up. The Freedom was getting themselves established, but a couple of years off really rebuilding that roster.
It was rough. This was, of course, after what had happened, the Yoshiko Aikawa incident. So things were a full-on rebuild in many ways. As I like to say, thank God for Freedom. Kairi Hojo would go on to win this tournament, pinning Hudson Envy in 18 minutes and 16 seconds. To this point, the longest 5-star Grand Prix match ever. It wasn't broken until recently, mind you. That was the longest for a very long time. That is terrifying, folks.
But it also, again, speaks to how the tournament has changed. A big thing I remember, and we'll probably get into it more moving forward, is when I was watching the 5-star Grand Prix as I was growing into following Stardom, is these tournament matches felt very much like preview and teasers for what you could get in future singles matches where titles on the line or something. They never felt like big matches within themselves. And it's really sort of been the last couple of years, and especially in 2021 when the time limit jumped to 20 minutes, where you were allowed to spend more time wrestling and building stories. Now, not everyone liked that change, and I think the jump back to 15 minutes was the right call. But in general, we're seeing more time spent in matches and developing them and giving them more of the same vibe as a regular Stardom match.
We still don't know as of this recording how long this year's tournament will be. So
if 40-minute time limits for everyone.
If you hear 30-minute time limit or something, you can hit up Trent at OneUpCulture on Twitter with your either celebrations or complaints. But anyways, we move along. Worth noting, Kairi Hojo did return the winner's challenge to the World of Stardom Championship. But, as you'd expect, she came up short against Io Shirai at the Stardom 5th anniversary show, losing, unfortunately. That would, by the way. Well, I mean, I like Kairi. That would mark the second
known Io Shirai hater, Scott here.
No, that isn't even true. The reason I watched Stardom is because of Io Shirai. So get out of here. Worth noting, that is the second time someone challenged Io Shirai after winning the 5-star Grand Prix and lost. So just a little tidbit to toss into there. We move forward now to the 2016 tournament. And what is worth noting here is this is where we begin to rise up in numbers as the tournament goes from 12 to 14. As we know now, the tournament gets bigger and bigger and bigger, but this was the first growth. We had 7 per block. On the A block side, this tournament ranged from August 21st to August 22nd. Haha, we're back
September
to being
22nd.
Longer than a month. What did I say?
August. You basically said it lasted for 24 hours.
That would have been crazy. Sorry. August 24th to September 22nd.
Could you imagine the matches?
That's why Trent is here.
Minutes.
That is why Trent is here to back me up when I say things incorrectly. That's why I have him on all of my shows, because I will say things like that probably all the time and never catch it. That being
Full-time
said,
job, people.
listen to the Ocean Cyclone show. I say only smart things on that show. Anyways, so on the A block side, it featured Chris Wolf, Courtney Stewart, Kairi Ojo, Momo Watanabe, first tournament, Io Shirai, Tessa Blanchard, and Jungle Kiona. On the B block side, you had Hiromi Mora, shout out, one of the best. Natsumi Maki, you may know her from TJPW. Blue Nikita, Tony Storm, Kaylee Ray, Yoko Bito, and Mayu Utani. I got a big pop out of Trent on that one. That feels good. That's
Natsumi Maki of TJPW fame and TJPW fame only.
I don't know a Natsumi Maki that went anywhere else. I know a Natsupoi.
It's funny, I've heard Sayori Anu reference Natsumi Maki quite a bit lately.
Yeah, I don't know. She's crazy. Point. Anyways.
Believably crazy.
The final would be Yoko Bito versus Tessa Blanchard.
This is like before all of the problematic things came out about her.
That doesn't make it better.
Now, this is in 2021, admittedly, but it is, especially if you weren't aware of it, it is a bit of a shock seeing that name pop up in such a prominent spot. But I mean, like, there's a reason why she got as many chances as she has, is because of her talent.
Yoko Bito, of course, returning from retirement, her previous retirement, going on to win the GP here. She would challenge for the World of Stardom Championship against, you guessed it, Io Shirai at Stardom October Showdown 2016, and would lose.
As you guessed it. As is tradition.
As you guessed it. That would be the final time that someone would be dumb enough. I mean, someone would challenge Io Shirai in this tournament. So Io Shirai, of course, would not leave Stardom yet, but that was the final time that she was the world champion to challenge. So,
would you say this is the weakest 5-star Grand Prix winner of the bunch?
No, the next one. I think it's a debate between those two, for sure. Because at that time, by the way, we're talking about 2017. I'll bring the conversation. It's Tony Storm, because by that time, at that time, I should say, Tony, and I know Tony won the Cinderella, but at the same time, she still wasn't like as big a deal as she'd go on to be by any means. Yoko Bito at the time, at the very least, when she first debuted in Stardom, was one of the main event stars of that early era, but she did just come back as well. So I think there's definitely a debate there. You could, on one side, Tony had the accolade of the Cinderella, so it's not like she was someone that's just like, it's not like Tessa Blanchard or Hudson Envy winning necessarily, but it is, I think it's an interesting conversation because obviously Yoko was around not longer, but earlier, while Tony kind of just won everything that year. So it's definitely up for debate. Tony also the only person to do that still, win the Cinderella and 5-star in 1 year.
Mariah might be looking to prove us wrong this year with that comment, but
hey, we don't know. But I think that's definitely worth talking about. And if I look at this lineup, I can't pick anyone that would have been better than Yoko to win this tournament. So like I said, maybe like Tony Storm was in this tournament, so that helps her case too. She was around by the time she won. But Io Shirai, of course, champion at the time. Momo Watanabe had just stepped into this tournament. This is her debut. Finished with 8 points. Kairi Hojo, Mayu, like those are the only two I think we'd even.
You're basically looking at a repeat winner, or maybe putting Mayu in that position a little bit early, which, given it where it is, 2016, you could have done, especially considering, Mayu would be challenging for the title later that year against Io Shirai, and you would have completed the Cinderella 5-star double a year early. But But it is, it's not exactly people jumping out the page saying we should be winning. Too early for Momo, too early for Jungle Kyona, too early for Natsumi Maki, who would go on to do nothing in Stardom, of course. And otherwise, you're taking a risk on a foreigner. Tessa Blanchard would have been a black mark on this group. Kaylee Ray would have been a fine winner, but you'd probably be debating her at around the level of the Yoko Bito in terms of accolades overall. So it's a fair enough position, but probably both at the time and in hindsight, debatably one of the weaker. Like you could put Utami in 2020 as well, but if you're looking at overall legacy before and after, she's obviously gone on to do quite amazing things.
You made the joke. Right, of Natsumi Maki. I would pay Rossi Ogawa a lot of money for Natsupoi to win a 5-star Grand Prix. I just want everyone to know that.
In 2016 or 2023?
2023, 2024, 2025, 2026. Not back then. Not the TJPW famous Natsumi Maki. Anyways, 2017.
Rossi heard you say that and said bet. He's sending you a request, PayPal request for money in the mail.
Hey, I'll send it to him along with my many pay-per-view purchases. In the 5-star Grand Prix 2017, the field grew once again, going from the 1 year of 14 to 16. This would last for 2 years at that number. And as we said, Toni Storm would go on to win the tournament. But here are your competitors of the tournament. This also features the famous Mandy Leon win, which is worth noting. But your tournament was as follows. In the A block, you had Toni Storm, Kaylee Ray, Mandy Leon, Hazuki, Tam Nakano, Konami, Jungle Kyona, and Io Shirai. On the B block, you had Zaya Brookside, Chris Wolf, Hiromi Mimura, Mayu Utani, a 5-star Grand Prix debuting Hana Kimura, Kagetsu, also debut, Viper, and finalist, the previous winner, Yoko Bito. Yoko Bito would go on to become the first woman to be in 2 finals. She is one of the 2 to do so. There's only been 2 in the history of the tournament, so I think that's pretty cool that Yoko Bito happens to be one. So maybe she wasn't a weaker choice, Trent. Maybe she wasn't if she got to 2 back to back.
Just putting the discussion out there.
I know. Toni Storm would go on to win 8 minutes and 17 seconds, winning the tournament, and she would go on to become the first person to win in her title challenge. Of course, we talked about that title challenge at nauseum last episode, that title challenge and win over Mayu Utani was due to injury, as Mayu Utani would get hurt in that match. So we really don't know if this was the plan for Toni Storm to go on to win. But that is what happened. Toni Storm did win the championship, ending the streak to kick off the tournament's history of the winner losing to the champion, Toni Storm.
It took 6 years.
Yeah.
6 years for someone to actually convert to a victory. And even then it was by, oh crap, we're forced into a corner.
I still don't think it was supposed to happen.
No.
So Toni Storm obviously from there on made a humongous name for herself. And I think this tournament win and eventual title win is a big part of that. It's a big part of why, we're leaving the Forbidden Door weekend and she was the champion defending at that show. I think there's a reason why, Rossi wasn't wrong, I think, to see her as one of the top pushed international talents that the company has seen. Obviously, it's paid off for her long term. And, she's gotten better since all the way back then, but it was a big moment for her. And it's one that you can actually go back and watch.
First year of this tournament that is up there, pretty much in completion. And I know a lot of people rag on Toni Storm's Stardom career, but right around this time was when she was arguably the hottest she's ever been. In terms of independent talent, she was about as much, I can't miss as possible. Wherever she went, it was a big deal. And Stardom kind of getting her on, not exclusive, obviously, but kind of a regular, semi-regular appearance was a big deal. And I think her winning the tournament does make a lot of sense. Even if like the double is kind of awkward to look at in hindsight, like really Tony's the one who did that, not one of your permanent long-term wrestlers. But like she was a great talent, and there was a reason why she was protected as much as she was.
2018. The time we've all been waiting for, which was the Mayu Iwatani tournament win. Took them long enough to pull the trigger on that one. It was August 18th to August 24th. The tournament continues to get bigger. September 24th. I said August again. I caught myself though.
You did. I didn't get a chance.
What a week of a tournament that would have been. Absolute craziness for a week.
You're trying to work these women into the ground.
It's a lot more time than I gave them last time. I gave them 24 hours last time. 5-star Grand Prix 2018. You had in the A block Kagetsu, Rachel Ellering, Jungle Kiona, Konami, Kimberly, Tam Nakano, Natsuko Tora, and the finalist, the rookie, the big rookie, you may have heard of her, Utami Hayashishita. On the B block side, you had Saki Kashima, Natsu Sumire, JD Hayter, Nicole Savoy, Kelly Klein, Momo Watanabe, Hazuki, and of course, the winner, Mayu Iwatani, who would advance with 9 points. Hazuki was tied with her that year, so I just think that's worth pointing out. Hazuki was in the conversation. Iwatani would defeat Hayashishita 15 minutes, 56 seconds to get the win. Obviously, the big story of the 2018 tournament is Utami and what she was able to do right out the gates in her career, instantly telling us all that she's going to be a big deal. I think a lot of people at that time, I don't know if everyone at that time walked away from the tournament and said, "Oh, she's going to be one of the best in the world."
They did not. They were like, "Oh crap. Why is Rossi pushing this woman already as much as he is?" Which, funnily enough, is a phrase I hear a lot when it comes to Stardom wrestlers.
Yeah, people don't like when young start. That's the funny thing in wrestling. All right, you started me off. The funny thing in wrestling. Let's push young talent. And then when someone pushes young talent or new talent, you gotta hear about it. For on and on and on and on. Why did they push them? Why did they push this person? Oh, I don't know. Maybe it's to keep the scene fresh. Look at Stardom in 2023. Their majority of their roster, you could walk away saying, "Oh, they could be a Wonder or World of Stardom champion." Do you know why, Trent?
Is this a rhetorical question?
Because Rossy Ogawa was willing to push young talent. I'm sick of hearing this is more of a today problem than a 2018 problem, but even then it was a problem. You heard it, you just said it. Oh, so pushing her? Yeah, sure. Utami wasn't ready at the time, I understand, but they made someone instantly by having her have such a run. Now look at her. We're sitting here in 2023 crying and praying that this woman would be world champion again.
Rossi loves the sink or swim push with young talent. Basically, if you are someone with promise, he will give you a chance to show it. And it is then up to you to take the ball and run with it or to drop the ball. And generally, they run with the ball. You look at Utami Hayashishita here. Obviously, like she was very raw, but you could see what that potential was. And she did go on to fulfill it and continue fulfilling it. Around this same time, certain Momo Watanabe, who people are crying for to get more opportunities and more respect in 2023, she was given the ball at this stage. And there were people who were hesitant about that because she was fresh out of high school and was like, "Oh, is she really ready for this kind of position?" And looking back on the run that she had with that white belt, most people would say, yes, she was ready for that position. Is it risky? Yes. Will some talent drop the ball? Yes. But let's be honest, there's a pretty good track record when it comes to if Rossi picks someone in this position, there's a good chance there's a reason behind it. Now, is it potentially at the cost of your quote-unquote favorite? Possibly. But we all get a little wrapped up in the world of wrestling and our favorites. I can't comment because Jungle Kiona was in this tournament. And if you ask me, everyone she didn't win was proof that Rossi doesn't know how to book Stardom.
Everyone else has to remember at this time. Wait, let me talk to you. Io Shirai's gone. Kairi Hojo's gone.
Yeah.
Going to Mayu, obviously a smart choice because, that's the person you have. She's the one flying the Stardom flag, but you got to make stars. That's why seeing Hazuki come in second on her block, Utami coming first in her block. Momo Watanabe, of course, at the time was champion already, but he was willing to establish people right then and there because he needed to. We just talked about the 2015 tournament, where how they just didn't have anyone. Now then, if you look at this tournament, Jamie Hayter, Hazuki, Mayu Utani, Momo Watanabe, Utami Hayashida, Konami, Tam Nakano, that's some of your biggest names in women's wrestling today. And it's a lot because of these tournaments and how they help these wrestlers develop. Sure, is it sink or swim? Absolutely. But more often than not, they swim rather than sink.
It's also worth mentioning the top 4 point getters in last year's tournament are not in this tournament at all. Toni Storm, Yoko Bita, Io Shirai, and Viper, all not in the company come 2018. And then even the not the third placed wrestler, but Kaylee Ray, who was number 3 in one of the blocks, wasn't there either. It's not until Kagetsu in the B block, third place or equal third place, do you get that kind of repetition of character, which again shows you like Stardom at this time, there was a lot of turnover, not just amongst the big names, but you would see a lot of foreign talent coming in, a lot of foreign talent leaving. And this tournament has a lot of young up-and-comers. And as you mentioned, like 2023, some of the biggest names in wrestling. 2020 and 2018, not quite there yet. Tam Nakano, this is her first 5-star Grand Prix. We know it took her several years to really find herself. Same with Konami, especially as a character. It took her quite a while to find herself. Even Hazuki at this point was just starting to find what was making everything work. So it's understandable that kind of you take a risk on someone because you're probably taking a risk whoever was in that final with Mayu Iwatani.
That's all to be said. Mayu Iwatani would challenge for the Wonder of Stardom Championship, the only person in history to do so with this tournament win, and she would lose to Momo Watanabe at Stardom True Fight 2018.
As was tradition.
3 tournament wins from Mayu, 0 title wins.
Well, 4, including the IWGP tournament.
Oh, yeah. How dare you? How dare you? How dare you bring up that? That's still very fresh. All right. Anyways, moving on. 2019 would kick up to 18 participants. The biggest at this time. It would go from August 17th to September 22nd, 2019. This is the tournament we have talked about recently. So if you want to go hear us kind of go in depth about this tournament more, go check out the Hana Kimura episodes. We really dove into this, but the participants are as follows: Natsu Sumire, Saki Kashima, Azumi, Avery, Hazuki, Mayu Iwatani, Momo Watanabe, Tam Nakano, and the winner, Hana Kimura. On the other side, it was Konami, Bea Priestley, Jamie Hayter, Kagetsu, Riso Shiki, Andras Miyagi, Utami Hayashida, who was injured during this tournament, Jungle Kiona, and Natsuko Tora. Hana Kimura would go on to win the tournament by beating Konami. Again, fitting that idea that I presented earlier of how you have someone who benefits from being in the finals but doesn't have a shot to win necessarily. That's what Konami did. Of course, things have gone the way they have for Konami since then, but Hana Kimura at that time, we talked about it a few episodes ago, obvious right choice.
Yep.
Instant star from this tournament. It was one of those tournaments where you instantly see someone go from, all right, let's see if they're ready, to absolute bona fide star. Even if she didn't win the title from Bea Priestley after, it was guaranteed she was going to go on and have so much success.
Yeah, this was sort of the realization of what we were seeing throughout this year for Hana Kimura, and kind of proved that she was ready to take that next step. Konami obviously came up short in both this and the Cinderella tournament this year, which I think put her on a lot of people's minds as someone who could be ready to take the next step. Now, whether she did or didn't is sort of up for interpretation. But this is kind of the year that I think we really see the modern 5-star Grand Prix begin to take shape. In part because now we've got 18 wrestlers involved, so it's a bit of a bigger field, bit of a chunkier field. But also, like, I remember this tournament in particular, like the matches seemed to matter just a little bit more, and there was more just kind of excitement through the middle portion of the tournament as opposed to the previous years where it was a bit more like, okay, cool, that person's winning, that's kind of cool. Even with Mayu Iwatani, I feel like the hype wasn't quite there compared to 2019, and that's partly because Stardom was getting bigger. This is right around the Bushiroad acquisition period and then growing into really the behemoth that it would right before the COVID period. So that kind of benefits as well. But there's definitely, this is where things started to really pick up for the tournament, I thought.
5-star Grand Prix 2020, ranging from August 8th to September 19th. Tournament, of course, would be won by none other than Utami Hayashishita, the other two-time finalist, and I think 2023 could make her a first time ever in one way or another. We're going to find out very soon. But the tournament blocks were as followed. You had Utami Hayashishita with 10 points, Shuri with 9 points, Maika with 8 points, Mo Watanabe with 8 points, Jungle Kiona with 7, Natsuko Tora with 6, Azumi with 6, and Saya Ida with 2. On the B block side, you had, or the red block, I should say, you had Himeka with 11, Mayu Iwatani with 10, Tam Nakano with 8, Konami with 8, Giulia with 8, Saya Kamatani with 5, Death Yamasan with 4, and Starlight Kid with 2. They went back down to 16, and this is also very important. This is after all that change that happened early in the year for one reason or another. You heard me name all those names. Obviously, many of them are key parts in today's Stardom. But at that time, that's a lot of fresh new faces entering this tournament, trying to all figure out along the way. You know, Himeka was a finalist. This was Micah's first entry, Julia's first entry, Shuri's first entry. Obviously, Giulia and Shuri were more established at that time, but it's still their first entry. Starlight Kid's in there, of course, you know, at the bottom. Saya Kamatani's in there long before Saya Kamatani became who Saya Kamatani is today. But you get my point. You have some classics, but that was a lot of new faces that would go on to become part of that core Stardom roster that we know and love today.
Yeah, this wasn't a decision to drop to 16 because they felt it was better for the tournament. This was a decision to drop to 16 because what the hell else were they going to do? They lost several key members that they weren't prepared for, and they also couldn't bring in people from outside of the country like they had quite a bit over previous years. You know, even ignoring the obvious departures of Arisa Hoshiki, Hana Kimura, they couldn't really bring in B. Priestley or Jamie Hayter during this period either because of they weren't able to get back in the country, so
and they weren't working with other companies.
Exactly. Like, obviously, if this situation happened this year, you could see them maybe pulling on certain other companies and say, hey, you know, you've been working New Blood and all that, why don't you come in for a 5-star? But they were a little bit strapped. You know, but it turned out to be, I don't want to say a good thing, but it did allow a lot of fresh faces to find their way, because we've talked about how important this tournament is in establishing talent. Well, when half of the group in this tournament are fresh faces to the tournament and looking to prove themselves, they're hungry, it does create an interesting dynamic.
Absolutely. And Utami would go on to beat Himeka in 10 minutes and 19 seconds in that final. We kind of had this conversation beforehand, but now that we kind of have the retrospective that we do, it is interesting to see what Himeka would go on to do after this tournament. You know, she came in guns a-blazing, kind of like Utami did previously. You know, Himeka wasn't a rookie at the time, but she was just newly debuted in Stardom right before the tournament, had the most points in the tournament, and she'd never win a singles title.
Yeah.
So I do think
it's hard to say whether they expected more from her in this situation, or maybe they didn't realize her personal mindset when it came to wrestling and stuff. Obviously, you know, we have heard from her that she didn't see herself as a main player and maybe didn't want that spotlight position. They perhaps didn't realize that until after this tournament, because they did give her that super push. But at the same time, this push alone kind of carried her for at least a year and a half in terms of like value and importance to the company. So even when she wasn't being used, she felt like a threat. It very much kind of like, obviously a little bit different. When Zack Sabre Jr. won the New Japan Cup the first time, he wasn't a super established wrestler. That tournament made him a real threat and someone who could win any match on any given night. And I think Himeka in this tournament was established in a similar way, even though she didn't win the tournament like Zack did.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And thinking back to that tournament, Utami would go on to defeat Mayu Iwatani, of course, at Sendai Cinderella 2020, and that would ultimately, undoubtedly, establish Utami Hayashida as the new face of the company, let alone the new big thing in the main event. She's since then become one of the top faces of the company. Obviously, they've been through a lot of people, but I think out of the newer crop, besides Giulia, I think unquestionably Utami is that face of the company. I'm not gonna call her ace because Mayu's the ace until forever.
Well, she's not even the ace; she's the icon. She's knocked back the ace moniker in the past, but
no, but I'm just talking like the overall
yeah.
wrestling comment of someone's an ace. Someone's the person you count on when you need them. Like Hiroshi Tanahashi literally calls himself the ace, but he hasn't been the ace of New Japan in a long time. Mayu Iwatani is still the ace, even if she doesn't go by the ace. But whatever, that's enough. I think if anyone's to take over that role, though, it would be Utami at this point in her career. I think we kind of see that with the way they're telling her stories now. It's very Mayu Iwatani in the leader that might lose, roster members. That probably already happened by now, but you get my point. Anyways, let's kick it over to 2021. What I think is the greatest 5-star Grand Prix, not only ever, but also, and listen, 2022 is right there in the discussion. If we're going tournament start to finish, I'm willing to listen to either battle on that. I think I'll fight in my head of what the best tournament overall is till the very end, because what the difference is between 2021, besides participants, is the matches. The 30-minute time limit for the 2021 tournament. They, of course, like you said earlier, went back to 15 minutes for the 2022 tournament. Both very special in their own right, but undeniably, for me, the greatest 5-star Grand Prix run or tournament run I've ever witnessed is of Shuri in this tournament. This is the Shuri tournament. By 2021, by the end of this tournament, I think a lot of people walked away saying this is the new signature tournament of pro wrestling.
Yeah. It really established what this tournament was capable of. And look, in hindsight, the biggest debate is whether the time limit was too much. And honestly, yeah, it probably was. Not every wrestler was able to utilize it, but every Shuri match, definitely. And when you're experimenting with more wrestlers and different time limits and stuff, not everything's going to click together at the first time. But when you see what Shuri is capable of doing in this tournament against a range of opponents, against a range of levels, you can really appreciate the value of a tournament in establishing someone like Shuri was already established at this point. Let's not kid ourselves. She's SWA champion. She's been uber protected since she joined the company in 2020. So her doing well in this tournament wasn't a surprise. But I think people didn't appreciate just how good she really was until you saw what she was capable of pulling out night after night, whether it was at big venues or small little dingy 200, 300 seater venues. Like Shuri was just on another level at this point, and yeah, it really opened people's eyes to what could happen. 2019, obviously, was a tournament that started to show the potential. 2020 was hindered by circumstances, but now 2021 was really starting to spread its wings and showcase why people would get excited for the 5-star Grand Prix. And yeah, it also helps that maybe during this time, the G1 was still struggling to find its feet in Japan, still struggling to find its feet during the pandemic. So when Stardom steps up and delivers a performance like this, you can't help but take notice.
I misspoke. It wasn't 30 minutes. It was 20-minute time limits. I apologize. But you get the point. They were longer.
Some of them felt like 30 minutes.
There was a lot of time limit draws for a 20-minute time limit tournament.
Yes.
Let's just say that. I do think there's a possibility, and I'm going to be eating crow probably by the time this episode's come out, but I do think a 20-minute time limit could return this year with them going back to 20. I don't know. I think
20 participants.
I think they have the field that they'd be perfectly fine dealing with 20 if that were the case. That being said, let's talk about the field here in the 2021 tournament. As I was saying, with Shuri going on to win the tournament, what do you, between this one and 2022, could you decide right now which one's your favorite?
2022 as a tournament in full, I think, is a little bit stronger. One of the benefits,
57 matches to do that. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. I think they're very even in a lot of ways. I think 2021 obviously has a better single performance with Shuri. I think 2022 was stronger across the board. I feel like there was a few story arcs within that tournament which were better executed as well, which definitely helps. And unfortunately, look, 2021 was hindered a little bit because one of its big names, Giulia, did get injured halfway through, which affects the storytelling of the tournaments, like Momo Watanabe on the final night getting a free pass. Kind of works in a storytelling standpoint, but also you could tell that wasn't the intention that was meant to happen. So whereas 2022, I think, was able, even though there was injury concerns, and wrestlers sort of missing time and whatnot, they were able to make that tournament work across the board a little better. But if someone preferred 2021, I would get it. It's not a shocking call there.
Yeah, I think I'm in agreement. I'm with you. 2022 is the better one. That being said, can't really fight either one. They're both great. The standings are as follows. On the Red Stars block, you have Momo Watanabe with 12 points, Maya Iutani with 11, Koguma with 11, Starlight Kid with 11, Hameka with 10, Fukigen Death with 10, who replaced Natsuko Tora, worth noting. You had Natsupoi with 9, Giulia, who was injured in the tournament, with 6, Mina Shirakawa with 6, and Saki Kashima with 4. In the Blue Stars block, you had Shuri winning, of course, with 12, Sayaka Mitani with 11, Takumi Aroha with 11, Konami with 10, Utami Hayashida with 10, Tam Nakano with 10, Maika with 9, Unagi Sayaka with 9, Azumi with 8, and Ruaka with 0. So
she was just happy to be there.
She sure was. She got disqualified at least 5 times. So thinking back to this tournament, which we're going to go more in depth next episode anyways, so I'm not going to say too much, but I did miss that this tournament began on July 31st and ended on September 25th.
Yes.
So the tournament was expanded, obviously, with the amount of wrestlers involved, but it also expanded it was a very long tournament.
Yeah. And this is maybe one of the complaints in recent years is just the sheer length of these tournaments. And
people should just stop complaining about everything. Have you ever thought about that?
I do get it, like a 2-month-long tournament, like especially if you don't execute the mid-tournament stories well, it does drag a little bit, especially when, say, in 2022, it was very obvious Giulia was making the final, and it was obvious the story they were telling in that as well. So I do understand some of the complaints, but it is something to make note of. More people, longer matches, longer period that the tournament runs for.
Shocker. Wrestling fans complain. Put it on a poster. Let's kick it though to the 2022 tournament as we come here to wrap it up. The 5-star Grand Prix in 2022 expanded to 26 competitors. The biggest tournament in their history, but the beautiful touch was it still stayed at 2 blocks. Unlike New Japan in the G1 Climax. This tournament ranged from July 30th to October 1st, 2022. In 2023, it will be starting a whole week earlier, the earliest start point for the tournament thus far. The difference of this tournament were there were qualifiers for those final 3 spots that Ami Sarai, Mai Sakurai, and Saya Ida were able to win in a mini 5-star Grand Prix with the young competitors of the roster.
Yes, the tournament to get into the tournament does feel like it artificially lengthens the tournament process a bit.
This is the year I wanted that to happen because they had so many people out and they're just like, nah, Rumble.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay, cool. It's fine. I didn't want to see Tackle in a few meaningful matches. It's fine. But this tournament, of course, would go on to be won by Giulia, who asked all the right people. That was the right choice. Ask any of the wrong people. Don't listen to him. Trent, see, I'm just here to pop Trent. He's not laughing into the microphone, but he is.
No, I probably should be forcing an audible laugh there just to add to the impression, but I am laughing on the inside.
Yeah.
Not lamowing, but.
The Red Stars block was as followed. You have Tam Nakano with 16 points, Jamaica with 15 points. I think a lot of people forget how many points people have at the end of these more recent tournaments.
Especially when, like, we've gone through this tournament, like, from 2012, where, like, the winner had 7 points, and now that's, like, a bad score.
Oh, it's a really bad score. Micah had 15. Risa Serra had 15. Azumi had 14. Utami Hashida had 14. Koguma with 14. Shuri with 14. Saki Kashima with 12. Saki with 10. Thank God she's not in the tournament this year. Mai Sakurai with 9. Momo Kogo with 4. And Unagi Sayaka with 4. Of course, that would mark the end of Unagi Sayaka's run in Stardom.
So bad she left the company.
Yep. She was like, I gotta go refine myself. And then after that, she was gone. She had a few more matches, but then she was gone. In the Blue Stars block, it was Giulia with 16 points, Mirai with 15 points. All right, maybe she's a little pushed. Mayu Utami with 15 points, Suzu Suzuki with 15 points, Hazuki with 14, Saya Kamatani with 14, Starlight Kid with 14, Natsupoi with 12, Momo Watanabe with 12, Ami Saray with 11, Mina Shirakawa with 10, Saya Ida with 4, and Hanan with 4. Whew.
Can I just say, it's this year in particular, this year being 2022, it's really impressive how the blocks are so condensed within like 1 or 2 points. Like when I was doing prep work for the 2023 5-star Grand Prix previews, and you're making notes of how many points did they score last year? And it's like 14, 14, 14, 15, 14, 15, 15, 16, 14. It's like, wow. Like, I know, like, obviously a lot of work goes into making these tournaments work, especially when you're dealing with tiebreakers and who beat who so that they can advance. But, like, the mathematics to have such an equal board pretty much across there's only a couple of people who don't get into that 1 or 2 point range for each block. Wow.
That's why in elementary school they say that you're going to need math forever, folks.
That's what calculators are for, Mrs. Wilson.
I don't even know if a calculator is going to help me with deciding block math. That's pain, man.
It's easy. Who's your favorite? They win all the matches.
It is also worth noting that to me and to yourself, I know this because we've reviewed both of them, the 5-star Grand Prix finals for the past 2 years have been, for my money, the shows of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the 2022 final that night, with how many matches ended up being so meaningful, it's as good as a Stardom show as you could put up. So I'll say the same for 2021, obviously, with that. But we did miss out on Momo and Giulia, so I do give the edge to the 2022 one. But it's an accomplishment by this roster with so many matches, with so much going on for such a long tournament, to just have. It was really just greatness till the very end. There was never like a lull for me in terms of match quality, and they were always telling stories along the way. You're right. Giulia pretty much told a story in every freaking match she had. That Starlight Kid match is one that people will remember for a very long time, and I think that'll be more about Starlight Kid's story than Giulia's necessarily. But it is the beauty of this tournament, and it's why it has become the tournament that I love so much. A lot of the time, I think this is a overall wrestling tournament problem that Stardom doesn't deal with too much anymore, 2021 they did it a little bit because I think they were trying to figure out how they were going to adjust the 5-star Grand Prix, right? You had the briefcase after and stuff like that, which a lot of people didn't like. However, this tournament, I feel like they got everything right. They told stories along the way. Not every person that pinned a champion needed to get a title match. Like, they were able to work it correctly to make it all mesh together really well.
Yeah, I think that's whether you like the length of the tournament overall or not, is I do think they did a good job of keeping things interesting just in the story department. Now, yes, Giulia's path was incredibly obvious before the tournament began, and when she dropped the first 2 matches, like, you could have written that word for word almost. But within the matches themselves, she was telling different stories. She won every match with a different move, which I think does get forgotten quite a bit. You had Hazuki running out early. You had Suzuki, who came in with a lot of hype surrounding her for good reason, but didn't immediately set the world on fire and kind of had her own mini Giulia run there at the end until the final night. Maya Watani and Starlight Kid obviously had their story at the end. Like, there's a lot of little stories that kind of were executed well. And that's like, no matter how long your tournament is, but especially if it is a bigger one and a longer one, that's the key to keeping things interesting, because people are fickle. They have short attention spans. And when you present them a 2-month-long tournament, it can be difficult for people to lock in when so much is happening in the wrestling world. To give you an idea, there were 4 tournaments running in Japan during this 5-star Grand Prix. At one stage, all 4 were running on the same weekend. It's a lot of wrestling to take in. So to keep people's attentions, to keep them enthused and focused, you have to be delivering A, on the quality of the matches, and B, the quality of the story. I think they did a good job in 2022, and I'm excited with 2023 because I think with a more condensed roster, they will be able to nail things a little bit cleaner as well.
Isn't that happening this year?
With all the tournaments?
Yeah.
Yes, it is happening this year as well. It's going to be probably a problem moving forward because everyone's kind of condensed onto this same
No.
summer period.
It's not a problem. It's not a problem. If you like wrestling, it's not a problem. If you're a complaining person that whines all the time, it's a problem.
Well, I mean, I would prefer them not to all be running on the same weekend.
Well, sure, but it's one weekend. Whoop-de-doo. I get it, because it would be nice if if these companies came together. Hey, can you do your tournament here and we'll do ours here? But the G1's not moving.
No.
The Grand Prix is not moving. These are the top 2 companies. It's up to the other 2 promotions if they really want to move them, which they're not gonna, clearly, because they're summer events. That's part of the selling point is they're summer events. Oh, come out, see some good, nice tournament matches, blah, 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 blah. I get it, because it would be nice to have. It's why, like, I like the All Japan Champion Carnival, for example, being where it is. It's away from everything. And I think a company like a TJPW maybe would benefit from not having the Princess Cup at the same time as the Grand Prix.
That also benefits from being single elimination. So it does stand out a little bit in comparison, but it does face the issue of just being congested by so much wrestling.
I think the top 5 companies, you can agree to disagree, but the top 5 companies in Japan will have tournaments running at the same time, because Dragon Gate moved back the King of Gate tournament this year, and it's starting after their Kobe World event that I believe is this upcoming weekend when the show comes out. So there is a chance that they're all running at the same time. I don't know when it starts specifically, but I know it's like right after, which is terrifying. And maybe that might be overkill because they moved theirs back.
Yeah. I guess the one benefit is, like, especially domestically, people tend to be single promotion fans, especially like when we're talking Dragon Gate. You don't have to worry about crossing over with other promotions because they have their own little world developed in terms of their fan base. So I think it is probably more of a Western problem because we do tend to, I don't want to say overconsume, but like we tend to follow as many promotions as we can. Oh, New Japan's doing something. Oh, All Japan's doing something. Oh, GLEAT's doing something. Like, we try and take in everything. Japan, a lot of Japanese fans do tend to be a little bit more focused in their fandom. Their wallets probably thank them for that. So yeah,
What's the weekend that they all intertwine?
I think it's like the weekend of August 13th from memory.
August 13th?
Yeah, I think so.
Because
Without having it in front of me.
August 3rd is the King of Gate final.
Okay, so they just avoid the full-on clash. They'll be clashing with New Japan and they'll be clashing with Stardom, but I think they avoid Noah and maybe TJPW.
Which are both still running, they're just not that weekend.
No, because the N1 tournament starts on August 13th.
Oh, okay.
I think. Yeah. Or they start August 6th and TJPW is August 13th start, but yeah.
Well, thank
It's a messy period. If you're a wrestling fan, take your sick leave from work so you can watch it all.
Or just be a psycho like me. I think I'm smartly resting ahead of, like, I'm not watching like every little thing right now because the beast is coming, and that is tournament
Japanese
season.
summer.
It's Joshi summer, as I like to remind people. Joshi summer with all the great Joshi matches and tournaments that are coming up. That being said, we have come to the end here, so I have a few questions. But before that, I will say that this year's 5-star Grand Prix, for the sake of talking about this year's 5-star Grand Prix, your participants are as follows. You have Mayu Utani, Hazuki, Utami Hashida, Azumi, Sayaka Utani, Natsuko Tora, Starlight Kid, Momo Watanabe, Giulia, Micah, Tam Nakano, Natsupoi, Sayori Inu, Shuri, Mirai, Ami Sarai, Mina Shirakawa, Suzuki, Hanan, and Mariah May as your field of 20. Returning to that field of 20, it is a who's who of not only the promotion, but really Joshi Wrestling all in one tournament. There are people that are out of the tournament that I know a lot of people are upset about. But to me, it's better than expanding it so big that there's just people that don't belong either. Now, don't get me wrong. If they did 26, they could have easily filled it again this year, had a great tournament all over again, because I do think there are 6 people on the roster that didn't make it that could easily fit in. But this is really it. This is the cream of the crop in a lot of ways of Stardom. You are getting important matches every single show.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. I think that is the brilliance of this tournament over time. As we enter the 11th year of this tournament, to think of what we were talking about, and now we're at a point in Stardom where they don't have enough room for some of the best competitors. I think that is really a sign of how much Stardom has grown and how much the tournament has grown as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, are there wrestlers we'd like to see in the tournament? For sure. But I do like that makes it feel more coveted, that you've got people of serious value who are looking from the outside in for this tournament. And the other beautiful thing is there are still wrestlers in this tournament who can benefit from really surprising people with just how good they are, because we've talked about this is a showcase tournament for a lot of people. I think the best example in recent years is Mina Shirakawa really has proven herself as a wrestler through initially the 5-star Grand Prix tournament. And you kind of hope that there are wrestlers who can get the chance to do that. It's not so top heavy that only established veterans are there. There's still a few people on this roster who are in this tournament you look at and go, okay, if you put on a good showing here, you're going to stand out way beyond what we're expecting or used to. So that's the one thing I would hope they don't lose in this kind of situation, but they do seem to be managing that well.
They do. So my question for you, because next week I think we may accidentally answer it or not. I'm going to give you a 2-parter. What is the best 5-star Grand Prix match in your opinion?
Gee, okay, that's incredibly difficult, because
I can answer it right now for my personal choice.
Well, it probably leans to 1 or 2. I do actually. My first thought is Shuri versus Momo Watanabe, the 2021 Grand Prix final. There are a couple of matches from 2022 that stand out that could challenge it, but in all honesty, I think when you value in the stakes, the moment, the grandeur of being in a pay-per-view venue, and I think that was at the Oda Award as well. To me, that is the tournament. That's the match that kind of, if I was to people one 5-star Grand Prix
Yeah.
match, it's probably going to be that.
Well, that's mine, and that ruined the second part because just in case I was going to say, what's your favorite? What's the greatest final? But
Yeah, that does kind of ruin it, doesn't it?
Two birds, one stone. I was hoping you were in agreement with me, but you never know because I think there's been so many matches over the past 2 years, especially that you could pick a handful. Like if you told me, if you sat here and said Shuri and Takumi Iroha, for example, the 20-minute time limit draw, I wouldn't question you. If you said Shuri and Suzuki, I wouldn't question you. If you said Giulia and Tam Nakano, the final, again, I wouldn't question you. I think that's the beauty of what this tournament has become in a lot of ways. But we're both in agreement. Shuri versus Momo Watanabe, which we get to talk about next week on this show,
next fortnight,
which is very exciting. So let's wrap it up here. And this episode went a lot longer than I expected it to, but I should have expected one thing or another. We could talk for a little bit. Trent, hit him with the plugs.
Okay, you can find me on Twitter at OneUpCulture. When this comes out, the latest edition of the Ocean Cyclone Show will be close to coming out or come out that weekend, where we're doing a mid-season report on a bunch of different promotions and champions. I also have ChocoCast, which has recently released its second episode with Window Jeff, the new permanent member, joining us. I've got some articles that have come out, one on Saki Kashima, one on more things to do in Tokyo when it comes to wrestling events. I'm actually being productive for once, which is kind of scary. That productivity is set to continue coming into 5-star season, doing previews and all of that. So, yeah, I guess if you're going to follow me, now's a good time to do so because there's actually stuff to see. At OneUpCulture, again.
This is the most I'm ever going to plug my own stuff. So sit tight. Let's get ready. At Scotty Wrestling on Twitter, if you don't follow me already. I don't know how you found the show, but thank you so much for listening. Please follow me if you want to hear my daily thoughts on who knows what, usually Stardom, but I expand beyond Stardom plenty. I watch pretty much everything. If you want to check out some of my content that's coming out, as of the day that this podcast came out, I'll have an interview with Dragon Gate's Shun Skywalker having released on Fightful.com. You can go check that out. I had an interview with Mio Momono that recently came out. Working on some other interviews that I don't have the answers to yet, but Shun Skywalker one's pretty cool ahead of their big Kobe Pro Wrestling Festival show that upcoming Sunday. So that'll be pretty cool. In terms of other content, I've probably reviewed Stardom Sunshine 2023 in some form, whether that be a live review on the Fight Game Media YouTube channel or on the Patreon, but that will also go on the Fight Game Media channel. So if you want to hear my thoughts about that, all the cage match stuff, go check that out. I will also be potentially reviewing Midsummer Champions on the YouTube channel as well. So go check that out. My annual 5-star Grand Prix. 1 second. Sorry. I'm running. I got to remember everything. My annual 5-star Grand Prix previews for both Voices of Wrestling and on the YouTube channel for Fight Game Media will both be out eventually. I don't know when. Got to work on them. Waiting for the blocks. But those will be out. I will preview those in depth. Probably
that's when guests. Scott and I go head to head in competition.
Yes,
with competing 5-star Grand Prix previews.
Probably. Well, we do them differently, so it's okay. I'll probably have guests on for that 5-star Grand Prix preview if you want to hear multiple people's thoughts on the tournament. Me and Trent and Ryan will be doing an Ocean Cyclone 5-star preview, which will be a lot of fun. That'll be a first time ever thing, so I'm looking forward to that. There'll be our first ever live show. I don't know when that's happening, but that is happening.
Yeah, we need to negotiate with ourselves on that one, and we'll find a time.
We do. I'm also planning to potentially do a review for Summer Sun Princess Live. That would be a first ever TJPW live review, but I'm trying to do all these things now that I have like a work life and I can work around these things and actually be a real person. It's a lot easier. It's a wonderful thing. Otherwise, I hope that's it.
Be sure, of course, to follow the Can Out Podcast Network as well, which is where you're hearing this now.
Yes, of course. And I guess the last thing that just popped into my head, I probably had a shit ton of Forbidden Door content. So if you're still feeling that, you can go check that out as well. But that's it. I'm done. Trent's done. We're done. I gotta work in 8 hours. So long. Farewell. This was the Stardom Road podcast here on the Count Out Podcast Network. We'll see you next time to talk Shuri's 5-star Grand Prix run in 2021. So until then, see ya.